We are joined by Ms. Amina Khan, a political analyst, speaking to us from Islamabad. Ms. Amina, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now, Ms. Amina, defending his decision of the Afghan pullout, U.S. President Biden has said that establishing democracy and nation building was never America's mission in the country, whereas U.S. envoy Zalmay Khalilzad has been advocating and striving for unified, centralized, democratic government in Afghanistan for years. Isn't that a blatant contradiction in Washington's stance?
Yes, unfortunately, there is a major contradiction when it comes to the American foreign policy, particularly on Afghanistan. Now, when President Biden came into power, we were all expecting, as he stated, that there would be a review of the process, and one certainly did not expect such a hasty withdrawal. One would have expected that from the Trump administration. However, having said that, I think the manner in which it has happened, we are all seeing that the Americans have clearly left Afghanistan in a very unfavorable situation, literally in a lurch. And I think even now it is very convenient for the Americans to say that the onus is now on the Afghans and that they have to sort out the mess themselves. If that was the case, then we would have not have seen this war prolonging for more than 2 decades. Now, I think still with the situation unraveling, we've seen that the Taliban more or less have literally taken over Afghanistan in a relatively peaceful manner. We haven't seen a major exodus of refugees. Yes, there has been internal displacement, and we haven't seen a lot of bloodshed, which is somewhat positive. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this inclusive political setup, which, by the way, was a major point in the U.S.-Taliban agreement. And I just wish that, the Americans had secured this from all sides before withdrawing. However, having said that, there is still time to salvage the situation, and I think the Americans, I've always said this in the past, being a major stakeholder and signatory of the agreement, I think it is imperative they have a responsibility, and that is to leave after creating some semblance of stability, and that means brokering still a negotiated settlement, if not with the Kabul regime, which no longer is there, but with the other political factions and the Taliban, as we've been hearing about this inclusive political setup. Now, the Taliban themselves have been talking about it, but let's be very honest, their concept of this inclusive setup is also very vague because they haven't given us a framework. One is hopeful that now that the situation, it's very clear on the ground, the regional countries are pushing for this, and the Taliban also know that they cannot operate in totality, nor can they operate in isolation, and they will have to reach some sort of an agreement. But again, it is for the Americans to broker some sort of an inclusive setup.
All right, Ms. Amina, so the United States President promised the world an orderly and responsible exit from Afghanistan, but he admitted now that it was bad, messy, and far from perfect. What would be the consequences of this messy exit on Afghanistan and in the region?
Well, look, I don't know whether you're following, but if you see the scenes, from the Kabul airport, that just shows you the kind of desperation, the kind of frustration and disappointment, the Afghan masses, feel and have been feeling for the, past 20 years, if we just look at, since 9/11. It's very easy to say that, it was a mistake. The fact is, again, as I keep on saying, there is still time to correct the mistake. There is still time to salvage the situation. And I think this is the responsibility that the Americans have. Because, look, for example, with the Taliban have been engaging with regional countries. Pakistan has had a relationship with them from day one. But the day the Americans signed the agreement, they legitimized the Taliban, and they conveniently ignored Kabul. Now, within that framework, the entire onus does lie on the Americans. They can still correct the mistakes of the past, and that means by brokering, by pushing the Taliban. They do have certain leverage points that they can put on the Taliban to come to the negotiating table with the remaining factions that are there. And then we still have Dr. Abdullah, you've got Hamid Karzai, you've got the former members of the Northern Alliance. So there is a workable structure that's there, and I think, from my understanding, that some sort of an agreement has been reached, but I think they're just waiting for the right moment. And I think within this week, we are going to see progress on this front.
All right, Ms. Amina Khan, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News.